3, 2, 1. What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from Here the Spear, presented to you by NoleGameday.com. We're here live on a wonderful, fantastic Wednesday. It's a day before July 4th, so happy to hop on here as everybody's probably traveling or spending time with family getting ready for the festivities tomorrow. I know I am, but we still got some work to do here as Florida State has had a busy time on the recruiting trail. We've got some discussions here on the linebacker room. I'm sure we're going to dive into that with Dustin. He'll give us the latest on that. Florida State's been loading up on commitments in this 2025 class. We got a handful of things to go through as well, including EA Sports' offensive and defensive rankings on offense, defense, Florida State, and some interesting spots there. We're going to give our comments on that. Our main segment for tonight's show is top 5 position battles that we're going to be watching for in fall camp here in a few weeks. We're only, 3 weeks or so, maybe less than that, away from Florida State hitting the practice field. So that's going to be a good segment there. And then we got some basketball at the end. But probably the biggest part of this show this week, we've got a special guest with us, 2013 national champion, Nile Lawrence-Stample, one of my favorites that I got to watch back in my day. Big boy in the trenches. I was a big Timmy Jernigan fan, so I just love defensive linemen up in the middle. But Nile Lawrence-Stample, welcome to the show. And also, too, you got to give a shout-out to your show as well, Nolan with Nile. Great show, and I think it's going to have a big chance to grow this upcoming fall.
Yeah, man, I agree, bro. I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm super excited to be here and talk about our Noles and talk about how we're growing and some of the areas that we need a little help on. But I'm super excited to be on Nole Game Day and kind of letting you guys know what my perspective is on what's going on this year.
Down below, too, we've got Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief at NoleGameday.com, and then Austin Veazey, our lead basketball writer. Gentlemen, how are we doing over there?
Recruiting never stops. I mean, Florida State just continuing to have action on the recruiting trail, both good and bad these past couple of days, which we'll get into, but it's going to be a really fun show tonight. Excited to have Nile on here. And Logan, you know, we've been stacking up the national champions over the years. I think we got to be getting close to 10 by now.
He's not wrong. We've gotten our fair share of United champs on the show. Even outside of football recruiting, it's been busy, especially on the Maverick side of things. But glad to be talking to Florida State for a little bit.
Damn right.
Yep, we're nearing that time, guys, where, you know, Mike Norvell and the team, you know, I think they're spending their last little bit of time right now. I know we saw, I think it's Malik Benson, a handful of other wide receivers over there on the West Coast with DJU putting some work in. I think DJ flew them out over there to get some work in. Something, you know, DJ continuing to try to build that chemistry. But they're at that last little stage here before, you know, Mike's going to reel these guys back in, and they're going to get prepared for the season as it's going to begin earlier than usual with that week 0 game over there in Ireland. But before we get started, as always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, before you leave, definitely appreciate it if you hit that like button, subscribe, so you get notified every time we release a new episode. First, before we jump into, you know, kind of the quick hitters of the week with recruiting, EA Sports rankings, and top 5 position battles we'll be watching in fall camp, I want to go to you, Nile, and just catch up with you, see what you've been up to. We only got to talk on the phone for just a little bit, but it seems like you're a busy man. I saw on Instagram you've been around in my area a little bit as well, and then you also got your show you're doing over there at 10XL. Just, you know, kind of give us what's been going up with you and anything you can tell the fans as well.
Yeah, man. It's been a crazy, cool road, and it's bringing me back to Florida State, which I'm super happy to be back in kind of the thick of it. And a big part of it is my 2 little ones. So I got 2 little boys, and they are so hell bent on Florida State football. They love it so much that it's one of those things that you can't really not dive into now that they're at 8 and 6 years old. So that's been super awesome. I have a company here out in Jacksonville. I actually live in Jacksonville, Florida now. I have an exterior cleaning company here in Jax. It's doing awesome. We do a ton of companies and do a bunch of like residential homes, as well as a lot of apartment complexes and stuff. So we do a ton of work here in Jax, and we actually have been doing some exterior cleaning for Florida State as well, and going over to Tallahassee and doing cleaning there. So that's been really awesome, kind of going back to your alma mater and washing it. That's a really cool opportunity for us. And but when it comes to Nolan with Nile, I'm really excited about being being able to share my perspective on like what's going on with Florida State and like how it potentially looked when I was there and what players are really feeling and what's really going on with them like mentally, and kind of being able to share an inside look, but at the same time on the outside perspective. And Nolan with Nile has been a phenomenal opportunity. I'm so happy for it. We're going to be going to a ton of games. And yeah, man, just ready to talk some FSU football, man.
I was going to ask you, so you're over there in Duval. I would expect you're probably going to try to jump over to a few of the practices that FSU is going to be holding because those are coming up soon. Dustin, you'll be there as well. It's hot as hell over there at the UNF campus, but I would expect you're probably going to try to jump over there. I think James Coleman's usually always over there as well. Our guy.
For sure. I'll be at a couple of practices for sure. I'll probably make some at Florida State as well, just to just trying to form some relationships with some of these guys that are there. Some of them are reaching out in terms of just getting some guidance. So forming those relationships, trying to give back wherever I can at Florida State, and going to summer training camp is a really big part of that, especially mentally. So I'm making sure that I'm involved for sure.
I was going to say too, with Florida State and where it's at, and we're about to jump into some defensive line talk, but Odell Hagens, I want to get your thoughts on him as well, man. There was some chatter a little while ago that man was going to be retiring soon. It doesn't seem to be the case at least with Mike Norvell being hired. It seemed like he's just had an extra little ounce of energy. He just, a couple more runs still in him, it seems like.
Yeah, man. I would have to assume so. It's hard. Even when I was there, he was potentially thinking about it. So it's like I think if the going is going and things are going in the direction that he needs them in, and especially with someone like Coach Norvell, he's so intentional, so genuine. The time that I've got to spend with him, as well as the other coaches that I've talked to, only have good things to say about him. That it's hard not to be a part of something like that. So I think Odell's probably going to be there for a few more years. Talking to him, it seems that way, but you kind of never know. It's probably just take it year by year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think just for you talking about your podcast and your show that you're working on currently, and it's, it seems fairly new as well. I think you have such a good avenue that you can go down because there's not a lot of that content right now from, former players. Or maybe there is, but it's not as consistent. And, we've had a lot of former guys. We had Carlos Williams on here, who was one of our co-hosts on here, who was phenomenal. He's just so entertaining, and I think he could do radio. But just having someone like you be able to give that perspective, and it's not like you were 20 years ago, such.
Yeah.
You were literally there with the 2013 national champion. You can give such a great perspective of how that team won, and we got to speak with a lot of guys on here, Nile, that gave us some good thoughts on what happened behind the scenes, training camps, Telvin Smith tearing up walk-ons, everything.
Oh my God.
So so I think you're going to bring a great kind of content that is needed in this space for Florida State football fans.
We've mentioned the national championship a couple of times. I did want to ask you, Niall, winning a national championship in Tallahassee, Florida State, they came so close last year. Obviously didn't get a true chance after being snubbed from the college football playoff. But with where this program has risen over the last couple of years, with where it is going into this 2024 season, what do you think that they have to do to get over the hump, being a guy that has gotten there before?
I think a lot of the things that have to take place are going to be more in the locker room than on the field, if you ask me, because a lot of these players really have the it factor to make it happen. So when it comes to us and comparing the two, our team was almost like FSU against the world at that time. Even for those last couple of years, like it was just FSU against the world. We were on ESPN every single day. We had a bunch of stuff going on, but we stayed so tight knitted. We really were a true team. And yes, we were extremely talented, but when it came to the camaraderie that we had in the locker room, it was really bar none. So I think if we're able to get it together on the field, which I think our coaching staff has, we have all the tools in order to make that happen. I think if we could get it together in the locker room, I think we will be able to get over that hump and be able to survive some of those tougher issues and some of those injuries and some of those unforeseen things, and in order to be able to get to that next level and get to the playoffs and hopefully win that national championship.
So real quick before we move on to recruiting, we've hit that stage of the offseason, at least for me, where I'm going back and rewatching old games. And I've decided to put myself through hell and give myself heart attacks and rewatch a lot of the games from 2014. We always talk about the national championship season.
Yeah.
But what was going through that 2014 season like, where you're coming off the national championship and you guys are just battling back, down 14 points, down 21 points, seemingly every single week?
So in my opinion, a lot of it was complacency. A lot of it was we knew that we were good enough. We knew that we were great. We knew that we would beat every single team by a mile. But when we went into games, I think they kind of caught us off guard just because it wasn't as important to like put our foot on their throat. Once you get a national championship, you're kind of like, we've arrived, we're here. And I think where you have the Nick Sabans of the world that are like extremely grim, extremely like just so hell-bent on being the best at all times, you kind of become coarse. We didn't have that mentality. Jimbo, he wanted it, but I don't think Jimbo truly had that mentality. So when we came to that next season, we were kind of like the big dogs on campus and we acted like it. And unfortunately, some of those things caught us off guard and we had to bounce back. And we knew we could get it done. It just is kind of, let's go ahead and go out here and get it done. You know, that's kind of the mentality it was at halftime. We're like, all right, let's go and do it, instead of us putting our foot on their throat like we did the last season.
Was there ever a game besides the Oregon game, obviously at the end, where you're like, oh, damn, this actually might be it?
I don't know. It's honestly, I never really felt like we weren't. I would say maybe, I don't remember what the first or the second game of the season was, but like once we were able to set a standard in that second half, it became like, all right, like what adjustments are we going to make? Like, we just need to make the right adjustments and move on. After that, I really never felt like we were going to lose any game. It was just, all right, like we know how this is going to go. We already know that we're going to do what we need to do and come back the second half and kill them. But yeah, I don't think there was really another game.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon.
I really don't. Yeah. I don't really get the chance to talk to guys that played with it is my favorite player that played at Florida State during my time being alive. Didn't get to see Peter Warwick play, but I would probably say he'd be up there if I did. But right in the trenches with Timmy Jernigan, we were talking about him earlier. I was a massive fan of Timmy Jernigan. You got to play with him, learn from him as well. What can you say? Any kind of memories, some fun ones, some things at practice, just what made it. Maybe it was just him wearing his jersey halfway up during game, showing his belly. I mean, he was just such a fun, ferocious defensive lineman that Florida State's trying to get back to that realm. You had it with Braden Fisk last year. Fabo had kind of been dealing with that injury that he suffered a year prior against LSU, but, he was still, getting, more healthy week by week. Florida State was looking, you got Joshua Farmer here, which we're going to talk about heavily. But what was it like playing with Timmy Jernigan? Florida State's still looking for that guy that can be a wrecker, just like how Brandon Fisk was there at the latter half of the last season. Timmy Jernigan, so much fun to watch. Yeah,
so we're gonna keep looking, right? Because there really is no player like Timmy Jernigan. Timmy Jernigan was a generational talent, and I was so happy and honored to play with. It was very frustrating though, because we came in on the same year, right? So that was very frustrating.
Yeah,
because I watched a player come in at the same time as me and just completely excel from day one. Just day one, I'm like, all right, so what am I missing here? Because you're playing so well, you're understanding the defense super quickly. Like, what am I missing? And one day we're at on the sleds, and I looked at him like, yo, what's going on? Like, what's that? He's like, yo, I've been playing defensive tackle since I was like 4 years old. Like, I never played running back, or I never played, like, I made it play fullback for a little bit, but I played defensive tackle. Like, that was my position forever. So you're not gonna really find another player like Timmy Jernigan. His instincts were probably bar none the best I'd ever seen. And it was hard because he was right in front of me. So when I watched film, it would be hard to like replicate the things that he did, because he did 99% of the things based off instinct. So I'm trying to be like Mr. like technique and really listen to coaching, because I played soccer in high school, and then I went and played linebacker in high school as well, and then I played defensive tackle, which luckily I was able to figure it out and become an
wait, hold
player.
on. We gotta wait a second. Soccer, what size were you playing soccer?
I played soccer actually going into my 8th grade year. I stopped playing in 9th grade, but I was like 6'2". I was too big at that point, but I was good. I was just too big. But I was a big guy, but I transitioned over and I'm like, listen, Timmy, what can I do? And I'm watching and I'm like, okay, I really can't do anything. I'm going to have to mimic my game off someone else. But it was such an awesome experience to watch. I think all in all, Timmy was such a personality. So everybody really enjoyed him. But at the same time, like he was just a dog. But Timmy was Timmy. Like, there's really nothing else to say about it. We're going to continue to look for someone like him. And we probably won't find someone like him. We're going to find some dogs for sure. But Timmy was probably going to be one of a kind. And all my teammates, anyone on that national championship team will tell you the same.
Yeah, that was good. I actually got to see him down on the sideline last year's game. I guess that was when was that? I think he was down there. He was down there with
Alabama game.
Yeah, it might have been there as well. He's been involved, or he's just been on the sideline more than we've seen in the past. And I know he's had some more time too, just being out of the league for the time being. But it's just great seeing guys like you and a lot of these 2013 national champions, 2012 guys, EJ Manuel with being in the ACC network, really involved heavily around the program. It's just great. So anything before we jump into some recruiting, Dustin? I know you're chomping at the bit to get to some of this, and definitely talk that linebacker room, right?
Oh, let me tell you, I was just going to ask Nile, during this transition over to the sports media space, and you just kind of talked about it with EJ, but have you gotten any advice from EJ or like any of your former teammates or anything like that?
Yeah, I've talked with EJ a few times, and when it comes, EJ's a class act. He's probably one of the more genuine people that I've been able to meet, especially at his caliber. Especially coming in as a freshman, super cool dude, like just always top notch, genuine person. So he's given me some advice, and we've been able to chop it up a few times in terms of how to maximize the space in general, especially with my perspective. And that's been super, super cool. And some other players that I've been able to connect with. And the Nole Nation is so strong. Nole Nation is so strong. And when you're Nole-blooded, you get some real great brothers connected to it. And I continue to look forward to working with some of my boys and having some guys come on to my space for sure and start talking some Nole football.
Yeah, it's been great, and we'll probably talk some Mug Norvell somewhere in between all of this conversation on the show tonight. But it seems like he's done a good job, getting in contact with a lot of former guys. I think that's one of the first things he was doing since getting hired back in 2020 was, build those relationships early, because those mean a ton. And also, too, y'all built that to where it was. I mean, Bobby Bowden did what he did, and that was, Bobby Bowden's Bobby Bowden. One of, if not the best ever do it in college football, but from y'all's team to bounce back and get that 2013 national champion, there's a certain way that y'all did things, and I can see that kind of starting to marinate in the locker room in Tallahassee right now, and in that more, and you can see it as a result on the football field on Saturdays right now.
I agree.
Let's jump into some recruiting, gentlemen, and let's start off with some good stuff first, and then we'll get to the bad stuff maybe a little bit later at the end here. But let's start off with some really good stuff here. Now, a good quarterback can take you a very, very far way and can get you, take you to a national championship, but also to a damn good defense will do the same. But this time we're going to stay on the offense. Trell Jones, 2025 4-star quarterback, has shut down his recruitment and is sticking with the Florida State Seminoles. There was some chatter about some other schools in the state, specifically the Florida Gators, that trying to literally chomp at the bit and trying to get him over to Gainesville, but seems like Billy Napier lost out on this, and Florida State and Mike Norvell, Tony Tokar's here got their guy for the future. Previously participated in the Elite 11 and was named a finalist. We talked about that in last week's show. But D-Lou, what does this mean? It seems to be a good thing because a lot of recruits are trickling into that 2025 class.
Well, it's massive because, I mean, when it comes to these recruiting classes, that quarterback is expected to be the leader, the bell cow of your class. And as you said, Logan, Tramel Jones, he's taken some visits to Gainesville over the past couple of months and was there, I think, twice in June. And, that was a real possibility of him flipping to the Gators for a little bit. But Florida State, I mean, they identified Tramel Jones Jr. over a year ago, landed him in the spring of 2023. And that long-time relationship with Tony Tokars and Mike Norvell and the countless times that he's been on campus, especially getting him there once again for his official visit at the end of June, right after he wrapped up the Elite 11. I think that kind of sealed the deal for Florida State, and he realized that he wanted to lock in, be a Seminole, and not deal with the rest of these rumors and things like that for the rest of his recruitment, and he can just focus on being the best leader in this Tribe 25 class. And like you said, I mean, right after he locks down his recruitment, FSU goes on a little flurry here. And, he's still working some things behind the scenes with running back targets, receivers, offensive linemen. So he's doing his part. He's a very talented prospect. I think he's set to rise in the rankings throughout his senior season. We talked about what he was able to do, not only at the Elite 11, making that Elite 11 list after the finals, but also on the 7-on-7 circuit where he really dominated over the past couple of months. So it's not going to be a surprise when he's a composite blue chip prospect when it's all said and done.
Florida State staying strong there offensively too. We'll stick with some commitments here now, gentlemen. 2025 4-star tight end Chase Lofton picks the Florida State Seminoles. 6'6", 215 pounds, commits to Florida State over Texas A&M, Nebraska, and Missouri. Florida State trying to build some talent there, as we know. Landon Thomas came in this past season, highly respected rating there as a high school recruit, coming in as a 5-star. But, Florida State wanting to kind of start building that depth there of some talent that they might not have to develop so quickly. They want someone that can jump in and be a good pass catcher for these quarterbacks that they're loading up on right now in that quarterback room for Tony Tokars.
I really love this pickup for Florida State because not only did they go out to the Midwest and beat out Nebraska for a recruit who's really in their backyard, but they landed a talented one in Chase Lofton. And I mean, you look at the film, this guy is a natural pass catcher. I think he's going to add an immediate threat as a receiver to the tight end room whenever he gets to Tallahassee. He's a legit 6'6", going to have to continue bulking up and, becoming a better blocker at the college level. But as far as his athleticism and awareness as a receiver, he's very, very talented. And like you said, Florida State, not only beating out Nebraska, but Texas A&M and Missouri. I mean, this was a coveted prospect around the nation. And Florida State adds him to a room where, I mean, they need some more bodies. You're going into this 2024 season. Only 5 scholarship players at tight end at the moment. Kyle Morlock is the only one with over 2 receptions at the college level ahead of this 2024 season. And, he's going to be graduating at the conclusion of it. And they're going to need some guys to step up throughout the season. We'll see if Landon Thomas can make an early impact. Obviously, Jackson West still there in that room as well. But adding a guy like Chase Lofton, and, they're going to continue to pursue a second tight end in this class, I think, as well. They're going to need it moving forward for the future of that tight end room.
Let's jump on to the defense here, which is Nile's favorite side of the ball. But this one was an epic commitment here, gentlemen. If you guys didn't see it, it was awesome. If you make sure you check out socials. I know a lot of our fans are already over there on FSU Twitter, but you probably saw this already. But 2025 4-star safety Zay Thomas from Fort Lauderdale picks Florida State Seminoles over NACC, and I can't say division anymore, but NACC rival Clemson and Dabo Sweeney. But 6'2", 190. It was at the Hard Rock down there in Fort Lauderdale. And Dustin, you and I, we were driving around that, and Austin too, down there in Miami for the bowl game. So I got to see that. But in this time, whenever he committed, it actually lit up in garnet and gold, which was badass. It was awesome. So everybody on the road, I don't know what interstate that is, but everybody on. Yeah,
see it for the
you're
95.
yeah, everybody's driving by and you see his name on there and garnet and gold going up, and it's hilarious because it's not burnt orange and disgusting green. It is garnet and gold over there down in Fort Lauderdale. So probably not a big fan of that for the fan base over there, but still big pickup here for Florida State and in the defensive back room and specifically safety.
Yeah, we've seen some crazy commitments over the past couple of years, especially since the introduction of the NIL era. But I don't think anyone tops this one from Zay Thomas. Like you said, they're out in front of the Hard Rock, and I don't know if you noticed this, Logan, but right before he committed, he's talking about his commitment and who he's going to choose. And he had that Clemson hat on at first, and whenever he put the Clemson hat on, the Hard Rock actually lit up orange and purple behind him before he quickly flipped it to the Florida State hat. So, I mean, they were in on that from the beginning. Luckily, Florida State able to land one of their top targets in this 2025 class, regardless of position. Zay Thomas, a recruit that FSU has been pursuing for well over a year. And I mean, someone that this staff really covets with not only his ability off the field, but also the type of person and the character that he has off the field. He's really got that length and that athleticism in the defensive backfield that Adam Fuller and Patrick Surtain are looking for, and what they've landed so far over these past couple of recruiting cycles. But man, I mean, this dude, he's athletic, he's physical, hard-nosed. I think he's an excellent add to a really talented young secondary that's being developed in Tallahassee. And I mean, even better, he's going to become the first scholarship player, a member of the Seminole Indian tribe to play at Florida State.
Cool. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I heard that and I was like, holy smokes, that's dope. It's kind of crazy that it's the first one. But that is going to be a really awesome, special moment, especially for them to be able to do this at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. That is an amazing opportunity for him. I'm so excited to watch him play.
I mean, this is awesome right here. The flip was perfect, man. He played this. He had practice.
Let's go. Knowles, baby.
And then the guitar at Hard Rock with the old Seminole logo too. I know all the old school FSU fans are probably a fan of that. You probably are too. Now you won a national championship with that logo.
For sure.
Epic, man. What do you think about the way that these go down nowadays? Like, what are your thoughts? Would you have changed up anything? Would you have gone a little extra nowadays, or would you try to just stick it classic, book the family around and just put on the hat?
Yeah, it's crazy. I did mine in my library with my guidance counselor, my mom. You're talking about just real basic stuff. And I was a 4-star. So watching this now, it's crazy because social media is so important and it's such a big part of it now that I don't blame them. If I'm them, I'm creating my platform now. It's in your NIL. It has so much to do with your actual full scope as a player, as a almost like a semi-professional player, that you got to go big. You got to go big. You got to do everything that you can in order to continue to have all these eyes on you. And so I support it. I think it's fun. Some people do the most, right? But this particular one, you're probably talking about one of the coolest commits that is one of the coolest videos I've ever seen. And I'm lucky that it's a part of the team that I rep for sure.
It looks a lot better than what would have been the orange and purple. Yeah, looks a lot better on that guitar. Garnet and gold looks a little bit more natural down there in South Florida anyways, because Florida State jumps over that fence all the time to grab guys. So
it is a Seminole Hard Rock after all.
Exactly. Amazing.
Yep. That should be just specifically only to Seminoles moving forward. So lock out whoever else tries to do that. So, awesome commitment there. And now let's get over to the not so fun stuff of the week so far, where Florida State misses out on a commitment here, a big one, big talented linebacker, 2025 4-star Tavion Wallace, 6'1", 215. Had in the notes here, leaning Florida State, but no longer. He's a number 3 ranked linebacker on 247 Sports. He ends up picking Arkansas, going to play for Pittman over there. And, there were some other teams a little bit involved, but it seemed like Florida State, Arkansas battle there. Randy Shannon we'll talk about here. There's a handful that have been missed out on for Florida State and their target radar for this linebacker room. And as we know, it's been one of the rooms that we consistently talk about year to year where they're trying to bring in some talent. It's been carried by a few veteran guys like Tatum Bethune, Kalen DeLoach. Now we'll see how long you have with DJ Lundy. But man, Randy Shannon misses out big time here, which it seemed like Florida State was in a really good spot, maybe just 48 hours ago.
That was wild, man. I don't think anyone predicted this one. I mean, the way it was talked about going into it, this was a Florida State, Georgia, and Florida battle for Wallace's commitment. And then out of nowhere, it seems like Arkansas comes out of the blue and lands him late. I don't know if Walmart dropped a bag or what, but this was a very shocking commitment for Wallace yesterday that no one really expected at the time. It seemed like, after his official visit to Florida State at the end of June, that they had probably done enough to win out here. I would imagine even with him committing to Arkansas, this is one that they're going to pursue down to the very end because, we've seen it and, Florida State's been on the wrong end of it before, obviously landing a verbal commitment from KJ Bolden last summer, and then you get to the early signing period and he decides to flip that commitment. So I think Florida State, they're going to continue to work here because Wallace is committing to an Arkansas program that, hasn't been very successful over the last couple of years. Sam Pittman, you look at some of these hot list candidates and stuff. He's on a lot of those. Same thing with Billy Napier over at Florida. So I would imagine that's something the Seminoles will continue to monitor over the coming months. But yeah, a handful of other targets go off the board here at linebacker. Zadrius Rainey-Sale, someone that we thought Florida State had a pretty good shot with. He ends up staying in the state of Washington with the Huskies. And then you had 4-star linebacker Gavin Nix go off the board to Miami on Monday night. So, that's 3 misses for Florida State in just a matter of 2 days. And, it kind of hurt some of that momentum you built last week because I thought coming into this, worst case scenario, FSU lands 1 of the 3. Best case, you're able to land 2 of the 3. And, your linebacker class at that point is looking really good. But I just think it's unacceptable to land, none of the 3 at this point in time.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to get your take on the, the linebacker position specifically. You're up there and you're in the trenches at the front, but, just going through film and what were you doing, preparing game film and everything week by week back during your time at Florida State, how big of a difference maker is that linebacker position? You played with some greats too who played that position, one specifically, number 22 with Telvin Smith. But can you just give us the importance of that linebacker room? Because it seems like something that Florida State is missing there is just that true recruit. I think, Blake Nicholson, that's not the recruit that Randy Shannon, that's not he. He recruited him, yes, but there was some help involved there, and Derek Ray was very hands-on with that recruitment, Florida State's general manager. So, yeah, there's one young guy, but, Florida State's got to bring in some more talent here, and I just think that's such an important piece in the defensive side of the ball as a whole, and DJ Lundy's going to be leading this upcoming season, but got to find some more younger talent there. How important is that position group?
Yeah, it's so important. Obviously, that middle backer is going to be your captain of your defense. And when you have someone like Telvin Smith, or you have someone like Nigel Bradham that is able to really, those players, whereas Telvin's a little bit louder, Nigel Bradham wasn't as loud, but at the same time, they both command respect. They command you to be at a certain caliber, no matter if you're playing DB, defensive end, defensive tackle, whatever it is, but they demand a certain rapport that you have to have. So they set the tone. So having someone in the midst that we are grooming in order to take over that DJ Lundy position is so key. It's so vital. And it's going to have to happen. So hopefully we were able to do it through recruiting. If not, we're going to have to find them in the portal, but it is a huge part. Honestly, Telvin was not going to allow me to play in front of him until I proved myself. Forget the coaches. Until I proved myself, until I wasn't going to get him absolutely lit up by a guard, he wasn't going to have it. So it's a relationship that has to get formed between him and everyone else. So it's got to happen. It's got to be honestly like top priority, even prior to some of the other positions, in order to make sure that the core of the defense is going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's just a really interesting situation for Florida State because the criticism on the recruiting trail, I think you can say that it's warranted at this point for Randy Shannon. You know, as Logan said, Blake Nicholson, the only blue chip linebacker that has signed with FSU since he took over as linebackers coach. You do have 4-star Ethan Pritchard currently committed at the moment. And I mean, it would have been nice if they would have been able to land one of those 3 guys that we were talking about a minute ago. But I mean, then when you go to the development on the field, I mean, there's no doubt that Kalen DeLoach, I mean, went on an upward trend as soon as Randy Shannon started coaching that unit. Tatum Bethune came in from, at the time, the group of 5 level, and then was extremely productive during his 2 years in Tallahassee. DJ Lundy has continued to get better and better behind those guys as the number 3 linebacker, you know, the last 2 years. And now he's going to step into that major role in 2024. So I feel like you are seeing the development and you're seeing the talent get better over time. And then even now you can point to Blake Nicholson. I mean, someone that stood out in spring camp and is competing for a legitimate starting role going into the preseason a couple weeks from now. Justin Cryer has showed some flashes. So I don't know, like the talent is getting better, but they're going to need more talent at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, one thing, you know, Randy Shannon, he gets these guys coached well. It seems like they develop and they learn year by year. Also, too, like Lundy worked on his body a whole ton. Look at Blake Nicholson, did a great job too in the weight room, putting on some size that he needed. And it's going to be heavy in that rotation this upcoming season. But you know, on the recruiting side, it's something that is a big disappointment. And you know, it's at some point, you know, where do you go? Where does Norvell lean there? You know, hope to have some help there on the NIL side that can maybe, you know, try to distract some things here and there, you know, the recruitment side for Randy. But, you know, at some point, Florida State's got to be bringing in some talent, but also too, some that you should, you know, just be grabbing just because of what you're able to do recruiting wise, and shouldn't have to worry about some of these guys grabbing them away from you from Arkansas. Really now, like, come on. And what Florida State and Adam Fuller have been able to do defensively the last couple of seasons, you just have such a good track record defensively the last couple of years. You just can't be losing out on some of these guys that are so pivotal, like Nile was just saying, on your defensive side of the football. So, you know, we've been talking about the trenches. That's been the big discussion. And, you know, Odell went out there to the pond and got him some guys. And now we're over here at the second level of the defense. And like, hey, Randy, we got to get something going here, my guy. And you can't just rely so much on the transfer portal. Mike Norvell fully successful there, but you want to be able to develop your own guys like we're going to see here with Blake Nicholson. But just some work to be done. Absolutely. But though, Dustin, we've got a handful of other guys, though. We got some commitments coming on the horizon, starting off, too, with an interior offensive lineman with Peyton Joseph. We got 2, actually, July 4th commitments coming up. So FSU fans, I know everybody's going to be enjoying some drinks and some food. Enjoy it, but keep an eye out on your phones at some point for some commitments. D-Lou, give us the rundown on what to expect.
Yeah, it's a big handful, and actually, you know, there's going to be 3 prospects announcing their commitments tomorrow, and we'll see if FSU is able to land them all. But like you said, 4-star offensive lineman Peyton Joseph going to be announcing tomorrow between FSU and Memphis. Still leaning FSU at this time, like we talked about on the last show. You're also going to have 3-star tight end Hollis Davidson announce his decision. He's choosing between FSU and Auburn. And, you know, it seemed like FSU was the leader for a long time, but after picking up Lofton a couple of days ago, Davidson's been trending back to Auburn. So it seems like at this time he's going to pick the Tigers, but we'll see if he follows through with that. You've also got a 2026 prospect who's going to be announcing their commitment tomorrow. Tadarius Hughes is going to be choosing between FSU, Louisville, and Syracuse. Florida State, very early on in that recruiting cycle, but currently have the number 1 recruiting class, and I think Hughes is going to join that tomorrow on July 4th. And then, yeah, a couple more. You've got 3-star safety Max Redman committing on July 9th between FSU, South Florida, and Illinois. Someone that I think is pretty underrated in the recruiting rankings at this time compared to his stats and his film. And it seems like Florida State believes the same thing. You know, he's been someone that they've been pursuing for quite some time. brought him in for an official visit last month. I'd be surprised if he doesn't pick the Seminoles over USF and Illinois. And then you've also got 4-star wide receiver Dalen McCutcheon, one of FSU's top targets at the position. He's going to announce on July 13th between Florida State, USC, Texas, Ohio State, and SMU. This was another guy who was at FSU the final weekend of June before that dead period. And, I think with what they put into this recruitment, even though he's from the state of Texas, I think Florida State's going to pull him from the Longhorn State and add him to this 2025 class alongside CJ Wiley. So building a really talented wide receiver group there. And then finally, for the 2024 class, someone that we've talked about on the podcast before, offensive tackle Jazari Jackson. He's going to announce on July 8th between FSU, Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi State. And, he took official visits to all of those schools over the past couple of weeks. A reminder, this is a former basketball player. He's between 6'9" to 6'11", about 320, 330 pounds. And, he's now transitioning from playing for Overtime Elite to playing college football, exploring his options, someone with a crazy amount of size to be a football player. And, someone that these Power 5 schools, especially with not only FSU, but like I said, the Gators, Georgia, Mississippi State pursuing him, some really high Power 4 programs trying to bring this guy in and, potentially develop him into something special. Right now I'm leaning towards him not picking the Seminoles on July 8th, but we'll see how it shakes out.
Oh, man, you teased us there, man. You teased us. Man, I was looking forward to it. I was like, what can Coach Storms do in the weight room with this kid? I can't wait to see what he looks like in his sophomore year. But so we should be expecting, though, hopefully, an Alex Atkins selfie with a cigar out by the poolside on July 4th, right, for Peyton Joseph?
Yeah, that would be huge. You go ahead and add him alongside Solomon Thomas. It's the makings of a very good offensive line class for Florida State, and they're still involved with some very top prospects. And it seems like Florida State, the favorite for 5-star offensive tackle Josh Petty at this time.
Nice. Okay, so it should hopefully, fingers crossed, be a good show to recap some of these for Florida State and their favor. Let's jump into some EA Sports offensive and defensive rankings. Those got released earlier this week as well. Was a big discussion across social media. And
you skipped a segment.
Which one?
Did we get Nile's thoughts on?
Oh, yeah, we did. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do need to get actually too. I went through. Hold on, where did I put it at? Oh, it's down here below the EA Sports. But yeah, I do want to get Nile's thoughts on this because we were talking about it on the phone. But Florida State has done a good job in the trenches with Odell Hagens grabbing a few guys. 4-star 2025 defensive tackle Kevin Wynn, and then 4-star 2025 defensive tackle Myron Charles picking the Florida State Seminoles on the defensive side of the ball. Wanted to get your thoughts on these guys because like we were just saying, Florida State wanting to bring pressure there on the defensive side of the ball. Florida State has been able to do that successfully off the edge, but you lost some pivotal pieces there on the end side, and you're trying to build up some depth there and bring in some raw talent. But just wanted to get your thoughts on Kevin Wynn and Myron Charles picking the Florida State Seminoles and going to be coached under Odell Hagens.
Yeah. Odell's doing a great job recruiting. Obviously he's shown it in the past, and he's definitely showing it right now, kind of coming in a little bit strong with these 2 4-stars. I like both of these guys. It's so funny. Odell really has his prototypical guys that he wants to go after. So Kevin Wynn being somewhere around like 6'2", 6'3", he's definitely going to probably play somewhere in that nose guard position. I think he looks good. He's got great size, but he's got great leverage, right? And that's what Odell likes at that nose guard position. He likes great leverage. He doesn't want him to be too tall. But out of the 2 of them, I would say Kevin Wynn has a little bit more experience, a little bit more instinct, a little bit better with his hands, and at the position, whereas Myron Charles is really, really physical. He's very good, but he's a little bit more raw. He's definitely more get after it and go. Let's just go. Let's just blow through this guy and get the tackle. Where Odell's really going to be able to hone him in and really build the player that he wants. He's obviously taller, so he's probably going to play that defensive tackle position and be able to stretch out a little bit further, whereas a nose guard, you're right on top of the center, whereas your guard and your tackles are a little bit offset behind the guard's foot. They're a little bit away from the ball, so having that 6'4" frame, you can really jump on someone a lot quicker than someone that has a little bit smaller of arms. So I'm looking forward to both of these guys, both of them 4 stars. Odell, keep doing your thing. And I love being able to talk and see kind of what his perspective is on like what's going on. So like as we get closer to the season, I'll be able to talk with him. I want to see how these players look coming into next year and coming into, especially if Kevin Wynn might potentially come in early and be able to have some extra time to develop. So we'll see how it goes. But these 2 players will hopefully stick. Not only that, I'm wondering why Kevin Wynn even committed. Obviously, he's right down the street from Georgia. It seemed like Florida State was his first offer. So just like me, where I could have really went anywhere and I came all the way from Fort Lauderdale to Florida State, it's because they know what they want. Odell knew what he wanted. I was their first offer and I was able to commit really early because FSU wanted me. Same thing with Kevin. When a school wants you, it's going to be evident and they're going to able to end up going to the school that's going to be the best program for them. And I think that's a decision that Kevin Wynn made, as well as Myron Charles.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you, what's the biggest thing whenever you arrived on campus in your first year as a defensive tackle? What's the first thing in practice you learned with Odell Hagens? And like, just like, oh shit, I'm on the college level.
So
when was that moment?
So I'll tell you right now, it's the sleds, right? So the sleds at high school, they're just regular sleds that you just grab and push. Whereas sleds, when you get to college, I'm sure a lot of the high school programs have them, but a lot of them don't. But when you get to college, the sleds have a way of going up. So you have to hit them perfectly coming out of your hips in order for them to go perfectly up the way that you want them to. As coming from high school and hitting these new sleds, it is the biggest transition, and Odell is on your ass trying to get these sleds up. So that is going to be the hardest transition. And being able to go to camp, I'm going to be watching some of these players be able to get this transition out, and I'm looking forward to it. But I have to say that is going to be a fun thing to watch because it is hell.
Dustin, you've caught a stray from Odell multiple times whenever you're trying to go over there and film the drills going on with the sled work, and it's usually about their asses and hips not being low enough, and then he just gets ticked off and he's like, media member, Dust, get away. No videos happening over here, and you just get caught in the hellfire that he's bringing out.
That's why then, for sure.
I don't know what it is. Yeah, I always catch Odell when he's got an attitude and I'm just getting sent away. So
he means well. He means well.
I mean, Dustin, you are a bigger guy too, probably one of the bigger ones on the media. Not a bad thing, but he probably is not treating you like another big guy that's on the trenches and get your ass over, move away.
Maybe.
Put me on the sled.
Yeah, he can get you on the sled.
He probably wants to. It's going to get you on that sled.
I would pay an insane amount of money to see that because it wouldn't go anywhere.
No, come on.
Damn, geez.
Nile just gave me some tips, so
I got you. You need more? Let me know.
It ain't gonna matter with Dustin.
Damn, jeez, Beezy. All right, now let's don't get Beezy on it. That hip still recovering.
It's not built for people like me.
Yeah, from them plane rides, I know that hip's still hurting a little bit. It's a little sore. But yeah, let's jump into some of these EA Sports rankings, gentlemen. Let's get mad over some video game rankings. Sounds like such a fantastic idea to be before July 4th. Let's go offensive first, guys. EA Sports has their game releasing not too long away. When is the release date? I don't even know the release date.
The 19th.
Well, it's the 19th if you don't get the early access. If you get the early access, it's the 16th.
Okay.
So 2 weeks from yesterday.
All right. So yeah, that's coming out soon, but Florida State ranked at 83 overall, number 22 ranking in the team rankings. Teams such as Miami, Colorado, Clemson, Utah, Kansas, Arizona, Memphis, and UCF all ranked above Florida State. Thoughts on this? Because obviously Florida State has some changes going on their offense this upcoming season, but for some of these teams, though, to come out of the blue after what they showed us last year and just somehow be ahead of Florida State and Mike Norvell's offensive play calling is definitely a little shocking.
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, The first one that pops off to me is Clemson, which they were very mediocre on offense a year ago. And I mean, obviously losing a big player, a big playmaker in that backfield and Will Shipley, it's going to be interesting to see how that unit responds in 2024. And then, also Colorado, which, I get the flair. I get the flair with Sanders at quarterback. And, you've got Travis Hunter, one of the best, the best two-way playmaker in college football right now. But their offensive line was absolutely terrible a year ago. They're losing their best running back. So there are some teams on here that I don't necessarily agree with where they're at. But as far as looking at Florida State and the 82, 83 overall offensive ranking, I think that's about where I'd have them at the start of the season, just because you're introducing so many new pieces to this offense. You do have a veteran offensive line coming back, which I think, should bump up the rating a little bit. But I mean, you look out at the wide receivers, there are some guys that are really going to have to prove themselves, and the tight ends, it might be the weakest position on the roster as a whole. So I think 82 is about right.
3.
Whatever.
83, right? That's right there. Same thing.
I don't disagree with that, honestly, especially considering where Florida State's lacking on offense. Wide receivers is usually heavy built into that team overall as part of their algorithm formula, whatever they want to call it. But it is kind of crazy to look at and go, UCF, Memphis, really? But at the same time, I don't think Florida State's a top 20 offense right now. I don't think they are. Maybe they become that throughout the stretch of the season, and EA is going to update these rankings as we go through the season. But I don't disagree with that necessarily. What EA is doing with Colorado is they're doing what we do on the righty side of this thing. They're saying, oh, yeah, Colorado gets a lot of clicks. Let's put them in the title. Let's put them on the screenshot.
Come on,
They're
don't give away our secret stuff here, man. Come on.
They're doing the exact same thing. That's all they're doing. After week 2, after they lose to North Dakota State and whoever else, they'll fall back down to earth. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think EA Sports is doing a really good job at promoting this game. Like, when you're looking at a game and you're thinking about it, like, you're not really going to take things so seriously and so to the absolute player and the position. You're probably going to go based off of the tenure of the offense and what the offense does on a regular basis, or at least get a general average of what that offense is going to look like year to year. But at this point, they took it so literal that it's almost like they're expecting to almost compete with the regular rankings that are going on in real time, which is kind of hard to think about, just because if you're looking and you're playing like Madden or something like that, obviously all those rankings matter, but there's a certain caliber team that is built from this. We're talking about a Power 5 program that's always competing, that's always typically in a bowl game. Let's not get crazy, right? Let's still make this a video game that's somewhat relative to the caliber of play that the organization puts up with every year, right? And it seems like they're trying to put themselves in that conversation that it's we are going tit for tat. I don't care if a player gets an Achilles situation halfway through the game, we're dropping your ranking. That player's not going to play. So at this point, are we going to be gambling on this? Are we going to be making bets on this? What are we at? So it's going to be, but they're doing a good job at it. They're going to be, they're getting everyone hyped. That's for sure.
They're definitely engagement farming here. And you said, Nile and VZ, they're doing a great job of promoting, marketing, everything. I mean, to do also the top 10 most, it wasn't the most, the most intimidating stadium environments. And, Florida State's down there at 9, but then you got some other teams that weren't even in there, like Auburn. It just creates for all the fan bases to go at it. And nonetheless, we do that week by week, almost daily in the football season once we get in the fall. But why not do this right now in July and get it riled up and get everybody chatting about it beforehand? They've got a great marketing idea. They didn't need to share these rankings and everything, but sure enough, here we are talking about it on a little FSU show here. But Florida State at 83, and then we jump over here, and Florida State jumps up to 88 defensively on the overall rankings, number 11, and the team rankings behind programs such as Ohio State, Georgia at 2, Oregon 3, Alabama 4, Clemson 5. USC was at number 16, Colorado at number 20.
Insane.
Free roam ahead there, VZ. Why is that insane to you?
Because weren't they 100 and 20th in total defense last year, or
it was
something
insane to watch
ridiculous like that.
Colorado games. Like you just knew the next series from USC or someone else, it's going to be points or it's going to be a touchdown. Like that's just how the games went there for Colorado.
So, to see them in the top 50 is insane. I get they have Deion's son playing safety. I get that. They have Travis at corner. I get that. Outside of that, it's not a lot of redeeming qualities on that defense, even if they did replace a lot in the transfer portal. On the flip side, if we're looking at Florida State, I think they showed a lot of respect to Florida State's defense, considering the amount of talent that they're replacing, how much talent they just put in the NFL draft this year. To see them with such a high ranking, I was pleasantly surprised by that, and I think it's the right spot. I really don't have any complaints about where Florida State is defensively in this game.
I agree. It felt about right. Whenever we were talking about this, kind of projecting it beforehand, Austin, I think both you and I said we expected the defense to be a little bit ahead of the offense to start. And I mean, that's kind of where we're at. And like you said, Florida State getting some respect there with the guys that they're bringing back. And then also some of these transfers that are coming in. I'm interested to see where a guy like Marvin Jones Jr. or Earl Little Jr. Is going to be ranked when this one releases in a couple weeks. I'm
most curious about AZ Thomas because everyone on here is very high on AZ, thinking he could be a future first rounder, the next guy to debut in the NFL. I'm curious to see how they have him to start out and then where he ends up come December.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is going to be a whole another thing. And it's, I will say, before we wrap this up, as far as in terms of EA, I'm kind of butthurt about it just because they stopped making
I was going to ask
NCAA.
You.
The year that I started at Florida State, the year that it was supposed to be my year, they stopped making the game. So I am very upset about it, to be honest. But I'm still really happy that it's coming back. My boys are going to enjoy it. We're going to be tearing it up. And it's going to be fun. But I agree. I think the defensive ranking was really the ideal spot for it. I think that's where you get that respect. And that's what I was saying in terms of the offense. You get some respect based on, obviously we had some players come back, but one, we're Florida State is a defensive team. We're always good on defense, always. And they basically just put that respect on it. So you expect them to do it at all, but on all fronts. But again, it's algorithm and however they want to run it, it's going to be controversial. And that is what sells games for sure.
Yeah.
And before we move on real quick, I just wanted to ask you now, you just said you didn't get to be there for the year that you were started, but I mean, just to be in that game as a college football player, I mean, what is that feeling like?
It was really cool at the time until they took it away, but it was really cool. It was one of those things that's like, you were so used to it, right? Because there was a game. It was just a regular game. Everyone knew NCAA. And so you got there, you're like, oh, I'm going to be in the game this year. All right, cool. Like, I'm in the game. And then it got taken away to where it became like a real commodity at that point. But at the time, it was just kind of like, hey, and we all got the game. I think they all sent them to, so every single student gets the game. So every football player gets the game. So we got the game. So that was really cool. But yeah, it really sucked it going away at that time. Just a crucial time. I mean, supposed to be won the 90. Like it was going to be, what a great time for Florida State for NCAA. But yeah, it's one of those things. I got to just get over it.
Let's jump into the main segment of the show, gentlemen, and we'll finish off with some quick hitters from basketball from VZ. But main segment of the show on Here the Spear this week, top 5 position battles that we'll be watching for in this fall camp coming up here. We are not far away at all from that beginning, which I am excited for. Next week, we'll be previewing probably defense or offense. And then, we're going to jump into whatever kind of other big, you're about to have the luncheon soon, Dustin. They're going to start. It's going to start unraveling all everybody. It's going to be fun. But let's talk about our top 5 position battles, though. And, this is kind of scattered across all of us. It'll be more of a discussion here for tonight. But I'll probably just kind of lead you guys into it here. I want to start just first offensively, and it's on our thumbnail here on Facebook. But I think the wide receiver room is maybe one that is maybe not being slept on a whole ton, but there's got to be some guys here fighting for some starting spots in this unit, obviously, after losing Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. Who's going to jump up and be that breakout star for this offense in 2024? That's my biggest question mark in maybe just because of how that offense ran last year. You have a new quarterback here with DJU. It seems like they're going to try to go deep, use speed there. Wide receiver position, that's what you're predicated on there, if that's what Mike Norvell is planning to do offensively. And we've got a handful of guys that I think are going to be competing for the starting unit going into week 0 in Ireland. And a few names here, Malik Benson, who just came in from Alabama, came from a JUCO, number 1 rated JUCO player, comes into Alabama, kind of hit or miss on what he wanted to do consistently wise. And then had a coaching change here, got the opportunity here at Florida State, and has been probably the most breakout, the biggest breakout guy, I would say, Dustin, wouldn't you say, of the spring? I mean, just seeing him in person just for one practice, this guy is special. Like this speed, it's something Florida State didn't have last year. It did not have this type of speed from what I saw at practice. And so Malik Benson and Hakeem Williams, you lost Destin Hill due to injury. This Hakeem Williams now going to be a starter as a true sophomore this upcoming season. How does that work for Hakeem Williams this upcoming year? Just jumping into that discussion there, I think that's one of the biggest position battles for me in my top 5.
Yeah, I think for me, just kind of starting off, as far as this wide receiver room, I think Malik Benson is the only guy that has really separated himself from the pack. And it feels like he's going to be the alpha dog for Florida State in 2024. I mean, with his hands, his playmaking ability, I mean, he was just all over the field throughout the spring in a variety of different ways. So as far as the preseason beginning, I'm kind of logging him in as one of the starting wide receivers. I think it's going to be tough for anybody to beat out Ja'Kai Douglas in the slot. He's likely to earn a starting role as well. So I'm looking at that other outside receiver spot, and I think it really comes down to Kentron Poitier matching up with Hakeem Williams, competing for a starting role. And, you look at Poitier, a guy who has flashed that potential throughout his time at Florida State, but also has dealt with some injuries, and that really set him back this 2023 season. But you think back to the spring a year ago, I mean, he was, someone that we kind of dubbed the king of the spring. I mean, a breakout player for FSU at the time. Seemed like he was primed to seize a really big role for the Seminoles last season, but just couldn't get back over the hump due to that injury that he dealt with for a couple of months. Then Hakeem Williams on the flip side, I mean, former 5-star prospect, has the ideal size that you want at wide receiver. And I mean, it's consistently improved his frame over the last year. He's in really good physical shape at the moment, probably about, 215 pounds. And he's stacked on some muscle over the past year, still developing his talent as a football player, as a wide receiver at the college level. He was more of a raw prospect coming out of high school, but we saw some of that consistency begin to improve during spring practice. And, I feel like these two guys, they're going to be competing with one another. And these next couple of weeks during the preseason are going to be huge. They're both going to play big roles in the offense, but, whoever seizes the starting spot, I think it's going to come down to this performance over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, the only other name I'd maybe throw out there is Darian Williamson, who's been up and down. He's shown some flashes, but a big body receiver, 6'4", has a lot of size. Could he maybe squeeze his way in there? And he's a veteran guy too. He's been in the system for a few years now. Can he hold off the talent that is Hakeem Williams? As talented as he just hasn't shown it on the field yet. I thought we were listing all these position groups 5-1, by the way. So this is my number 1 position battle on my list. I think this is huge, especially in Mike Norvell's offense. Could we maybe even see some of these true freshmen get in the mix? Could we see Span finally break out? Could we see the LSU transfer Jaylen Brown get in the mix? There's so many different options in this room. We've talked about it a lot over the summer and throughout the spring, and I'm curious to see how it shapes out in the fall.
Yeah, so one thing that I find interesting, obviously you guys have kind of mentioned the majority of the people, so I really don't need to go into kind of those specs. Obviously, we have our front runners and other players that are going to try their absolute hardest in order to make it into this rotation. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's opportunity, and that's what the coach is going to tell them at the beginning of the fall camp. Listen, there's an opportunity here in this room. Let's go ahead and fight. Let's go ahead and get that juice going. So I'm really happy about that. But one thing that I think is interesting is that we have put ourselves in a really good spot, because obviously there is going to be somewhat of a running back battle as well. But we have 2 players that are, so obviously with Rodell and Toafili, we're happy because those are two really good running backs that can catch out of the backfield. It really opens up our pass game. So whereas we are kind of in trouble, we're not in trouble, but we have a concern at wide receiver. We are absolutely blessed with two dynamic runners that will be able to open up the pass game for us in all else fails. And whatever is going on, we can open that pass game up in some capacity there.
The funny thing is, when I was going through my list and listened 5-1, I initially had running back pretty high. And then, like you just said, I'm sitting there going, this running back room is stacked. It doesn't matter who's starting because these guys are going to rotate in and out. And you didn't even mention the guys like Kazeo Holmes, can Mekhi Danzig and his speed work in there? Can the bowling ball muscle hamster Cam Davis work his way in? Sam Singleton, who I'm really high on. There's so much. Jalen Lucas out of the backfield too. There's just so much talent in that backfield that, yes, it's a position battle, but at the end of the day, there's so much talent in there that I don't think it's going to matter as much as some of these other position battles will. Agreed.
Yeah, the running back one I was going to talk about. The running back is something that, you think of and you're like, all right, maybe really it's just competition of, maybe who's, going to fit the best system that week to week or something like that of that nature. And, Mike Norvell usually likes to run his system and game plan specifically kind of around the running back and seeing who's going to click best against that defense. But running back, turns down quite a bit there. I'll just go to you guys next. Who do you have, position wise that you're going to be keeping an eye on, or even if it's a player to player kind of competition specifically that stands out to you guys outside of starting off there with the wide receiver room?
Yeah, I'd say I'm looking at that starting linebacker spot next to DJ Lundy. It feels like that's kind of the biggest hole in the defense at the moment. And there's a lot of guys that are probably in contention to start there. We talked about Blake Nicholson early in the show. You had Sean Murphy transfer in from Alabama, go through spring practice with the team. Omar Graham Jr., someone we didn't mention during the spring a lot, coming back from a lower body injury, and he should be good to go in the preseason. You've got Justin Cryer going into his second year at Florida State, and he's shown some good flashes so far. And then Cam Riley, the graduate transfer, coming in from Auburn, 6'5", 240 pounds. It's going to be interesting to see how Florida State transitioned him to that linebacker spot in a 4-2-5 defense. So, that's really the big question mark here. And there's positive and negative qualities about, every single one of these guys. And what's interesting to me, is Randy Shannon, are they going to open up that rotation a little bit more in 2024? Because for the most part, these last 2 years, Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune have dominated a lot of those snaps. And then DJ Lundy, picking up the rest of the slack wherever those guys leave off. I don't think you really have 2 or 3 guys like that are really ahead of the pack of everybody else. And, maybe you open it up to more playing time across that unit throughout the season.
This was the number 3 group in my rankings, and I agree with you. That's that second spot next to Lundy. There's just so many different guys that could step in. I'm kind of thinking Cam Riley's going to get that inside track just with his experience in college football. He's not transferring away to be a backup. He's expecting to be a starter at least early on. We'll see how the season goes and how he performs, but I think he's going to have that inside track. But Sean Murphy's, he was at Alabama for a reason. They turn out linebackers like nobody else has in football for the last 15 years. Blake Nicholson's very talented. Omar Graham's very talented. There's a lot of talent in that room. We just haven't seen it on the field yet, like you were saying.
Yeah, this training camp is going to be really one for the books in the linebacker room, just because you have DJ Lundy there that is going to help kind of lead the pack and make sure everybody's on their P's and Q's, but it's really going to be a battle. My biggest thing, I would love to see Omar Graham kind of come in and potentially earn a spot. He's been obviously loyal to us as well as he came in. He is a Nole from the start. So we would love to see him be able to get playing time. He played in the Orange Bowl. But I think the biggest wild card here, and my thoughts heavily, is on Cam Riley. He's not a downhill traditional linebacker. He's just not. He is someone that is going to so when you go into training camp and you really figure out like what's going on with the particular team that year, because every single year is different. No matter if you're at the same school for 4 years, every single team is different. Coaching staff potentially has a different changeup or something that they're trying to push. And Cam Riley may have to go into this season thinking that I got to play Fox. Like, I got to learn how to rush a passer possibly, because that's the frame that he has. He can cover really well. So if he can come down and learn how to rush the passer, he will create a great opportunity for him to be able to either compete with Marvin Jones Jr. or be able to be a backup, because obviously Patrick Payton is in there, right? Like, when Patrick Payton's in there, like swimwear. So at this point, him being able to get on the field, he's going to potentially have to figure out how to fit in there. And that's where Demarcus Walker, when he was playing with me, he had to figure out what was it that I can do in order to be a big pivotal part of this team. And it was rushing the passer from a 3-tech position. And he was able to do it and excel at it. So Cam Riley may have to have that conversation, because he's not a downhill linebacker. He's not. And unless he can transition to that, which unfortunately I play linebacker, you got to be it's a mentality in that position. So we'll see where that goes. But it is going to be fun. It's going to be a room that I'm going to be watching very, very closely.
Yeah, you're going to be up there at some of these practices, Nile. So I'm going to need you to give me the scoop of what's going on offensively, defensively when it goes to the trenches, 3-on-3s, 2-on-2s, 1-on-1s, whenever it's Odell versus Coach Atkins, because that is by far, once the pads are on, I don't really want to hear it until we get the pads on, but those are by far the best parts of practice that I always jot over to, because those are some 2 units going at it. And when Odell and Atkins are going at it, it's fun to watch. And it's been, when I was there for the first practice, man, it was chippy. I mean, these guys, they were tired of hitting one another, and, it's spring camp, so you're not going to face anybody else. But like, it's a chippy team. You can tell there's might be a little chip on their shoulder, but this defensive line, I like the nastiness as long as we stay smart and where it doesn't hurt you on the field and cause penalties. I want to, jump into one offensively, though, that I think is maybe not a position battle in particular, but it's one where we've got to get some answers out of it, and there is going to be some competing going on, and it's a tight end room. Who's going to step up? You have Kyle Morlock there, and it's Kyle Morlock. Like, you lost Jaheim Bell, and who was a versatile tight end, something that is just not, there's not a lot of kind of Jaheim Bells out there, and kind of ran as like a Deebo Samuel there for the 49ers. Someone's got to step up, and it's going to be heavy competition this upcoming fall camp. Like we talked about earlier, brought in 5-star Landon Thomas. You're able to grab him away from Georgia and Kirby Smart. Now it's about developing him, and you're not expecting to see him be in, a heavy amount of production this upcoming season. But are you? Dustin's got the eyebrows going up. Is it and desperate mode of that nature for Florida State? I just think this tight end room, there's going to be a heavy amount of competition on who's going to get playing time, yes, but who's going to actually be a damn playmaker in that room for Florida State, to where defensive coordinators actually have to prepare for that unit. If not, they're just going to worry about wide receiver and running back.
I'm worried about it, man. I've been worried since spring practice started, and I don't think that I've saw anything, throughout March or April that kind of alleviated that concern to me. And, the big thing was Kyle Morlock going to take that step and really be that guy in the tight end room. Like you said, Jaheim Bell's gone. Marquise and Douglas, your best blocking tight end, he's gone. You also had Preston Daniel transfer out of the program. So, you lost a lot of guys that had been in the rotation for a couple of years. And, in Jaheim's case, only one, but a productive year at Florida State, where he battled through some injuries to, have a really good campaign for the Seminoles. But I didn't feel like Kyle Morlock necessarily took that step forward during the spring. If you look at the PFF grades, and if you're into stuff like that, he was rated as the lowest graded blocker on Florida State's offense a year ago. And I just feel like that's something that, they've got to figure out with him being 6'6", 245 pounds. He should be moving guys backwards. So, you hope that's an area that he continues to improve on this spring. And behind him, who's the number 2 in that room right now? I guess Jackson West, but he hasn't recorded a catch at the college level yet. He was in there for some blocking reps at the end of last season, and has dealt with some injuries during his career. Brian Courtney has contributed a lot on special teams and has gotten in sparsely on offensive reps so far. Jarrell Powers hasn't really done anything at the college level yet, still working on that transition from wide receiver, which he played in high school, to tight end now. And, he's been banged up, missed all of spring practice. So I think right now, Landon Thomas, I mean, he's right there for your number 2. And I mean, if he comes out with a strong preseason, it sounds crazy, you could maybe be talking about him being your number 1. I mean, the opportunity, like Nile was saying with the wide receivers, I mean, it's there if you go out and seize it and perform during training camp, because they just simply don't have the bodies right now.
This was the number 5 position group on my rankings, kind of for the exact opposite of what we were just talking about with the running backs. The ceiling for this position group is just, it seems so low. And, maybe depending on who the number 2 is, if it's Jackson West, he has the same initials as Jordan Wilson, who was just a blocking tight end a few years ago. Is he going to be the number 2 tight end just for that reason, just to go in and block and help a unit that had some run blocking struggles last year? It's not a very redeeming position group, at least on paper. Maybe someone flashes something that we didn't see in spring during the fall, but it's not great on paper.
I was going to go ahead and say, too, you were kind of hinting at it there, D-Lou, about Landon Thomas. We're going to see Landon Thomas play this upcoming season. He's going to get some reps out there, and it's going to be in the passing game, too, just because of natural talent. D-Lou, you've been able to see him in person before perform. We've seen so many clips of him. There's a reason why Georgia wanted him. One of the best programs in college of developing tight ends there. They've been able to do it since I was young, really young. But Florida State is going to have to utilize a little bit of someone with a pass catching ability, because right now there's no threat to me on that offensively for Florida State in that tight end room. So we're going to see some Landon Thomas. Just he's not going to be able to add the size right now. Still got to be developed and everything, and that's just fine. But we are going to see some Landon Thomas this upcoming season, I do believe.
I think he's going to end up playing a big role within that tight end unit, just because, like you said, I mean, he's a natural receiver, and you would think, going back to Kyle Morlock and with his size, and I mean, he was a guy that obviously moved up from the D2 level to FBS levels. I mean, dealt with a massive difference in the talent that he was competing against last year. And, maybe he'll rebound in 2023, but it just didn't feel like he was the receiving threat that he necessarily should be at Florida State. And I think Landon Thomas, he's got all the qualities to step into that role. I mean, just really natural, athletic, can go up vertical, and, he's improving as a blocker. I don't want to compare him in that facet to Morlock just yet, because he's only going through his first spring practice at the college level. But I felt like, from day 1 to the end of spring, you definitely saw some strides in the right direction. I mean, that was an area that he got some compliments from, as far as Mike Norvell and Chris Thompson. So just a true freshman, but with the way that room is kind of set up at the moment, I mean, the door is open for him to come out and grab a major role in Florida State's offense.
VZ, jump us into one of your rankings here. I think you ran us through 1, 3, 5. Yeah. What's your let's jump into number 2. That should be a good discussion.
This is a sneaky number 2, and I'm sure everyone's going to disagree with me. Offensive guard. I feel like we know tackles, we know center, but at guard you have Keandre Jones, who transferred in from Auburn last year. Took him a little bit to get used to the system. Then you had TJ Ferguson transferring from Alabama this year, and Richie Leonard, a very experienced guy coming in from Florida. That's 3 veteran, capable guys trying to get 2 spots. And as I just talked about with the tight ends, last year had some real run blocking issues, and we've already talked about how talented this running back room is. How is this combo going to figure itself out to where they can get the running game going again? Because we know Norvell, we know Alex Atkins, they love themselves some damn counter pulls. How are these guys going to work out and figure themselves out in this offensive line rotation?
Yeah, and with that, I would add Bryson Estes as well as Jacob Rizzi to the mix. Estes, I mean, arguably to me, was one of the most improved players throughout spring practice, and seems like he's given himself a chance to fight for a starting role and a spot in the rotation this upcoming season. Then Rizzi, obviously a transfer coming in from Harvard, didn't get to go through spring practice with Florida State, so we'll see him for the first time when the preseason begins. But I think just based off, what we saw during spring, I think right now it's probably going to be Richie Leonard and Terrence Ferguson that end up manning those spots. Keandre Jones, wasn't able to participate during that Garnet and Gold Spring showcase back on April 20th. But I mean, this battle, this is just on paper. We're going to see what happens during the preseason when these guys get back out there on the field. But at the very least, no matter who does win these starting jobs, when you look at the guys that could potentially be their backups, I mean, this is a really strong line for Florida State that's very deep. I think last year you could probably go about 7 or 8 deep and feel pretty comfortable with the guys that you were putting in. This year, it feels like you may even be able to go to 9 or 10 with the guys that they have waiting in the wings. I mean, a very veteran offensive line with more experience and, some young talent growing behind it.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is one of those, especially when you're looking at it going into training camp. Whereas you have a defensive tackle and a nose guard, they're really going to be interchangeable only if there's a shift during the line. But we're two separate players. We do not do the same thing. Whereas when you have an offensive line, a guard, center, and a guard all technically can be all the same player. You have your center's going to be probably your most athletic, but those 3 players are all interchangeable. So when I was there, especially with Rich Rickett, you had so many changes throughout the season. You're talking about being healthy. You're talking about who's kind of playing. You're going up to even if that player's right knee is getting too much wear and tear, and they have to pull off of that knee, we'll move them to the opposite side. So there's so many different things that go into that it's like I want to see the end of fall camp and see kind of where we are. It sucks because obviously Jeremiah Briers has had so many injuries and stuff like that. So I really hope that he can stay healthy. But that's probably one of my only concerns was that right tackle spot. So I am looking forward to seeing who's staying healthy. I love the depth that we have in kind of composing that final offensive line as we get to the end of the fall camp.
Delu, I'll let you go to this next one. If you've got one on your list, we've been through a few of Beezy's, but is there anything that you've got written down that you'd like to share? And then I've got one that I want to bring up to you guys that might be a little interesting for some of our fans to listen to.
Yeah, we can go to the defensive backfield. I think as far as the cornerback positions, those are basically locked down at the moment. You might have a little bit of a battle in there for that nickel job between Kevin Knowles and Earl Little Jr. But I want to go to the safety spot because it feels like Shaheem Brown has one side locked down. But, I mean, outside of that, you've got a very promising youngster in Conrad Hussey, who is, continuing to get better day by day. And then Florida State went out and got a couple of veterans this offseason, landing Miami transfer Devontae Brown, who actually started for the defense in the Garnet and Gold Spring Showcase. And
surprised some people a little bit, I would say, in camp.
And they also went out during the spring window and got back Omarion Cooper from Colorado, a guy who had previously played at Florida State for a couple of years, started off at cornerback, and then the spring before he departed from FSU, got moved back to that safety spot. I believe he was playing corner at Colorado a year ago. So, you kind of don't really know where he's going to fit in just yet. He can kind of play either position. I would imagine that FSU kind of starts him at safety, but he could work into that nickel conversation as well. But I'm really looking at those 3 guys because Conrad Hussey, he's got a chance to come out, really take this job and run with it if he can just continue to be more consistent play-by-play because the flashes are there. This kid, if he continues to grow towards that vast ceiling, he could be the next defensive star in Tallahassee. But then you look at, Devontae Brown and Omarion Cooper. Those guys probably have a little bit of a higher floor at this point, aren't going to make as many mistakes play-to-play. They might not flash as much, but they're not going to take as many risks, I think. And Devontae Brown, especially, it seemed like he really transitioned to this defensive scheme very well during spring practice and got a lot of props from Coach Fuller and Coach Sertan.
You took the words right out of my mouth. This is a floor versus a ceiling thing. You have Devontae Brown, who's the floor raiser, and then you have Conrad Hussey, who's the ceiling raiser. And I think it's just going to depend what Fuller's feeling in a particular week on who he's going to roll out there. Hussey just has that playmaker type mentality to him, whereas Brown's been there, done that. He's been at multiple programs. He's just seen so many different things and can compute so many different things as that center fielder back there. And it's really going to depend what Fuller and Sertan really want from that backfield, depending on the matchup. And I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, this was probably I think this was my second was that free safety spot. So There's two different things here. Obviously, you have Devontae Brown and Conrad Hussey, and they're two different players, like you guys said. There's one thing that you can't really teach, and that's experience. And that's the only thing that Conrad is missing right now. He's missing experience, because when it comes to that safety position, a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. That's what it is. You have to train your eyes to be in the right spot and pick up, not only that, pick up the right reads. So football is nothing but a reaction sport. So when you have a player that has tons of experience and being able to see what they need to see on a consistent basis, that's going to be your safest bet. I think if Conrad puts his mind to it and he comes into training camp, he absolutely has an opportunity to take this spot and be that starting guy. Not only that, we love seeing Conrad Hussey play. Like you said, he has those flashes. I think he has the right mentality. He's kind of just because he's fighting a battle that he can't really win in terms of the experience. But I think if he's able to overcome that with just absolute being a dog and being disciplined, we may be seeing him starting on that first game in Dublin.
Yeah, Conrad has just that natural dog in him too. Physical player, puts himself in spots. But yeah, there was true freshman mistakes that he had last year and some inconsistencies. But still, you just have that natural ability. You could tell Mike Norvell, Adam Fuller, Coach Sertan, who's had a great start in his career just in year one at the Florida State defensive back room. There's a lot to like with Conrad Hussey and that safety room too with Shaheem Brown. But I want to bring up here, fact or fiction for you guys. Florida State has a QB2 quarterback competition. Fact or fiction there between Luke Kromenhoek, the hot young quarterback coming in with a lot of net. Whoa, why are you looking like that, VZ? You need to stop. No. You're going you're out of pocket now. You're out of pocket. But Luke Kromenhoek and then Brock Glenn. We saw a little bit, of course, from him last year, got thrown into the absolute fire. But is it fiction or fact? What do we got here? Is there a QB2 competition, you think, D-Lou? What are you thinking here?
Not really. In my opinion, I don't think, FSU, they've obviously got DJU and they've got Brock, who was able to get some very good experience last year. And, you want to see him take some strides this season in the playing time that he does get, assuming that DJU ends up winning that starting role. Publicly, Mike Norvell hasn't named a starting quarterback just yet, but it seems like with what DJU was able to do at the end of the spring and, Brock Glenn missing that period due to an injury, that DJU has ascended some in this quarterback battle. And you point out, back earlier in the show that he's having the receivers fly out to California and continuing to work on that chemistry and things of that nature. I think that says a lot about his chances as far as winning the quarterback battle. But then when you look at the two, I mean, like I was saying with Brock, he picked up some really good experience last year. I mean, this kid, in my opinion, he's ahead of his years as far as his knowledge of the quarterback position and how quickly he was able to get down this offense a year ago. And I mean, he was really just kind of shot in the foot with the position that he was put into during the ACC championship and Orange Bowl. So you can't really fault that, when you're thinking about his future at Florida State and what he could become, in my opinion. So I think he's probably got that number 2 spot locked down just with what he was able to do a season ago. But I mean, that's not putting nothing against Luke Kromenhoek, who is Florida State's quarterback of the future, all of the potential in the world. A guy that Florida State has been recruiting for a long time. They built this relationship and they chose Kromenhoek a couple of years ago before he was a nationally known prospect. And, he's lived up to every benchmark since then. But I mean, I think his job this year is going to be to continue to develop, make strides, continue not only on the field, but also in the weight room, off the field, things like that. Learn from DJU, a guy who has been through it in Clemson, went out to Oregon State as well, and now is at Florida State. All that stuff is only going to benefit him as he goes through the process. But as far as QB2, I don't think he's necessarily competing for it this year.
I agree with Dustin. Coach Norvell, Coach Tokars, Coach Atkins, they'll tell you this is a fact, that there is a quarterback 2 competition because they're coaches and their job is to not give anything away. And they want to bring out the competition, bring out the best in these guys. But I agree with Dustin. This is leaning more towards fiction. We've seen Glenn in action. I think he took a lot of positive steps this offseason. We even had people in the comments in this podcast say Glenn should be quarterback 1. None of us are going to be saying that. But I think he's rightfully entrenched as the quarterback 2.
I think so as well. I think he's definitely a quarterback too. I I definitely think that there's 100% competition when it comes to QB2, and there better be competition like that all year. Just because that 2 spot is so important, and it's so pivotal that if Luke is not and Brock aren't competing throughout the entire season for that number 2 spot, they're not going to be ready in order to get thrown into a national championship game or a ACC championship game. So they have to be competing. So the coaches are definitely doing the right thing. I think Brock, the experience that he gained going into the fire like he did is really one for the books. I have to assume a regular season game is going to be absolutely nothing to him at this point. Let's go, let's get it. I've been through way more on a national stage. You could not get bigger than the stage that he was on. So of course we're gonna allow him to come in and hopefully lead us to a victory. But all in all, that number 2 spot is never locked down. Let's go ahead and continue to compete and make sure Brock and Luke are ready to go.
And see, what I'm thinking here is it starts now. It starts this season to me because, yeah, you got to let Luke develop. He's a youngster coming in, but this kid's mentality has been, I'm fighting to start. I'm coming in. I want to compete to start. And that's a phenomenal identity that you want to bring coming onto campus as a first-year quarterback. But this starts now because next year, we've got a good-ass quarterback competition, gentlemen, between Brock, Glenn, and Luke Kromenhoek. I mean, it's setting up for a primer. I'm already ready to get there. I know we got to get through Ireland. We got to have 2024 season, Florida State, make the playoffs, whatever. I'm ready for QB1 competition between 2 guys that Florida State did a good job of recruiting and bringing in, and it's going to be one hell of a fall camp. It brings me back to, 2 different really excellent top-tier talents. We'll see what they've got, but goes back to the days of what you had with Coker and then also to with Jameis Winston. That is a true inbred, full-on competition there for Florida State that we're going to see in 2025. So it starts now to me. That's what I think of for Luke Kromenhoek's kind of mentality. We've heard it, D-Lou. We've heard it in interviews with this kid. We've had him on the show. This kid comes in and he's got that kind of bar that he wants to reach, and it's awesome. It's awesome to see. And Brock Glenn too. He showed a lot of courage last year, and that's gonna be a fun ass battle for Tony Tokars. I know he's excited about that.
There's no doubt. It's gonna be a really fun one when it is time. And yeah, like you guys said, the practice is definitely very important as far as the future competition, because these guys might not necessarily get a ton of starting game reps this year, but I mean, every day in practice, like Nile was saying, they're going to have a chance to push each other to get to their absolute best. And, you got to add Trevor Jackson in there to that quarterback competition next year as well. You're going to have Tramell Jones Jr., assuming that he continues through with shutting down his recruitment and signs with Florida State in December. He's going to be in the mix as well in that room. You're going to have a lot of young talent for Tony Tokars to work with. And, it's just getting really exciting to see what Florida State has done in that quarterback room with their recruiting, with what they brought in from the transfer portal over these last couple of years. I mean, it's stacked at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I'll give my last one here for top 5 position battles and 2. VZ, I know you've got one left, I think, too, at that number 2 spot. But one that's kind of just stood out to me in this discussion, talking about running backs here. Mike Norvell likes to have, for the most part, 3 running backs in that rotation. If you really think about it, Florida State also had Rodney Hill this last season, who we thought was chance to really be really, I know that, tough situation there that he put himself through. I think he'll admit that now, but and he has, I think he did that socially on Twitter, but Mike Norvell likes to run 3 quarterbacks. Who's going to be fighting for that RB3 kind of spot? Because we kind of know it's going to be Lawrence-Stample and Odell Williams there, but who is going to jump in between Cam Davis, Samuel Singleton, which Visa, you think he's going to be the breakout star for you this upcoming fall camp, and Kazai Holmes, and you've also got Jalen Lucas in there as well, a versatile guy that you'll probably put in the slot here and there and be running around with some speed motion. Who like that to me is something that stands out. Just coming into fall camp, who's going to be battling there? Because Cam Davis, I'm sure you've seen him, Nile, these recruiting photos, and then he gets on campus and how big that kid is. Lawrence-Stample said on Emily Peters' show over there on Tribe Check, said that they need to check the birth certificate on that kid because there's just no way he can look like that this early on in his career. But that to me just stands out. Who's going to be that kind of RB3? Because, if someone gets dinged up, knock on wood, you're jumped in there. And Mike Norvell expects a lot out of that running back room, led and coached by Coach Yak with David Johnson.
It's hard to pick, honestly. I mean, the room, it's just so stacked at the moment. You've got a bunch of guys that can do different things. I mean, if you're looking for RB3, do you want a gadget guy that can contribute on the ground and, through the air, someone like Jalen Lucas, where you put him out in space and he gets a little bit of a corner, he's gone. I mean, you blink, he's in the end zone. Or do you want more of a traditional running back, someone who's got a lot of experience, and someone like Holmes, who started his career off at Penn State, now has been at Florida State the last couple of years. And I mean, you can even go farther behind that. Cam Davis probably fits more into that traditional running back talk, but then I think Samuel Singleton, he's more of a tailback where you can just kind of move him all over that backfield and really just try to create space for your playmakers, get them into the open field and let them do the rest. So, I mean, what flavor of the week are you looking for at that time? And I think that kind of depends on your RB3. And that says something about Mike Norvell and, Coach Yak, David Johnson, with what they've been able to build up. I mean, any given year, any given person in that backfield, you put them out there and they've produced.
To me, it's pretty easily Keziah Holmes at the third running back spot. The argument is Jalen Lucas, but I think Jalen Lucas is, I don't even know if I classify him as a running back as much as I would just classify him as like an offensive weapon and just using him all over the field. I think that's where he's going to be utilized best in this offense. And as much as we like Cam Davis, as much as I really like Sam Singleton as a guy that can contribute in the near future, to me, it's Holmes is to lose.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. I think Holmes. I think Cam Davis would be honestly idea if he had more experience. He's a little bit more experience in that world, just because we kind of need a hard nose, someone like almost like a fullback situation, but we need someone that can really hammer the rock, because our guys right now are not they're definitely versatile, but I wouldn't say hard nose, run downhill, we need 3 yards and make it happen. We don't have that right now, so I think a Cam would be ideal, but I think Holmes can probably get that job done. So we definitely need someone traditional back there for sure.
Easy to wrap this segment up. I'll jump you into your number 2, unless you've already been through
This is 4. This is 4 because number 2 was guard.
Yeah. Okay.
Are we sure that the edge spot across from Pat Payton's is Marvin Jones Jr.'s to lose? Because Sione Lolohea was second team All Pac-12 last year, and he's not gonna just let some young pup come take his spot. And as much as we all want Shea Tree Jr. to be like his pops, Sione's been around the block a little bit. Marvin Jones was buried on the depth chart at Georgia. I think that's gonna be fun to watch.
I know what you're talking about here, and I'm probably gonna be like D-Lou here, but I had one practice. I had one little spring showcase. Lilo Hayes got some trouble for the youngster. He's got a little bit of his dad in him. I mean, this kid, I don't think Georgia used him right at all. I
don't disagree with that, but Sione was second team All Pac-12 for a reason.
But I think it's kind of like how we were just talking about running back. Florida State likes to have a heavy rotation there in that defensive end room. Who's going to be DE3, I guess you could say there. I just think Marvin, to me, and I was in that same boat with you until something flipped mid-camp. We were hearing from D-Lou a lot more, reading up on the practice observations, who he was going up against, and then just to see it in person, and he got multiple sacks right off I think it was 2 back-to-back plays getting in the backfield, a sack. And that scares me about the tackle position there, but just still, it's a good sign. We Jared Verse dominated every practice like it was nothing else. But I think it's locked there. I think it's about who DE3 is, in my opinion.
I will say I did have this one written down on my list: Marvin Jones Jr. Versus Sione Lolohea, just because, like Austin said, I mean, Sione has played a lot of football. He's a veteran, whereas Marvin Jones Jr. is still trying to realize that talent, that potential at the college level after, not having as big of a role as he expected at Georgia. Some of that due to the talent in front of him, some of that due to injuries. Now, we did begin to see him, that light start to turn on during spring, especially the second half. And like Logan said, I mean, he had some freaky practices, and you go into that spring showcase, and I mean, he was dominant from the get-go there. So, I mean, he's certainly putting himself up in line to land that starting role, but I really just want to see it continue into the preseason, continue to be consistent and really earn it against a guy, Sione, who would start on a lot of FBS programs.
Yeah, this will be one of the better matchups. Getting Marvin Jones Jr. into the role that he's supposed to be playing will be fun for him as well as fun for us to watch, just because his hand really needs to be in the dirt a little bit more. Even though he's going to be playing that Fox position, so he'll still be standing up, but we're going to rush him. He's got to rush the passer. He's got to be able to get into that mode and be a pass rushing defensive end. And obviously Georgia didn't utilize him like that, and we will be able to have him play some coverage. And I think that's what makes him really versatile, is that he can play coverage, but also doing as much kind of just research and talking to some of my coaches. He's very, very smart. This kid is he's a very understanding person of what the defensive scheme has to offer him and how he could play well into it. It's just having the right coaching that's going to put him in the right positions and force him to say, hey, listen, this is where you should be. But that is going to be a very good matchup, and I think it is perfect for Florida State and Nole Nation for have this matchup in order for Marvin Jones to be the best possible player he can be, or potentially get beat out. We'll see.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fall fun camp, gentlemen. This was a great segment too. I mean, we could sit on here. I mean, you can tell we're itching for some football to come back, but we could sit on here for 2 hours. But we got to get Nile out of here. He's actually has some kids to take care of here. I just have to play some video games before bed. So, but let's jump in. Let's jump into some basketball and wrap this thing up. What basketball-related things can we jump into, VZ? Because it seems like there's been some contracts, but then also some opportunities for some former Seminoles and get into some summer league stuff.
Yeah, I'll do my best to keep this brief. As expected, Darren Green Jr. went undrafted last week, but he's still going to get a shot in the NBA, signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the San Antonio Spurs. He'll be playing for their summer league team. The Spurs seem to like themselves some Seminoles. They obviously drafted Devin Vassell in the lottery a few years ago, re-signed him to a big contract last year. They've got Raekwon Gray playing for their G League team and signed him to a 2-way contract at the end of the season. They had Anthony Polite play for their summer league team a couple years ago. Now they got Darren Green Jr., sharpshooter. I think he's going to fit the NBA game a little bit better. Curious to see how he's going to play in Vegas, and I think actually in Sacramento to start for that summer league. So curious to see how he's going to play. Malik Osborne back in the NBA fold. He'll be playing for the Phoenix Suns summer league team. He had been playing the last few years in Greece, but teams have liked his size, his versatility defensively, can guard a bunch of positions. I'm excited for him to get another opportunity in the summer league. I think he's going to make a real splash, and I'm not saying he's going to make his way into an NBA contract, but the Suns need cheap talent. If he could find a way, I think that'd be a really good fit. Then the contracts. We got ourselves some big contracts this week. We talked about Scotty Barnes potentially earning $270 million with his contract last week. We have Patrick Williams signing a 5-year, $90 million contract to stay in Chicago, which kind of surprised me. I did not think Chicago was going to hang on to him. He hasn't really progressed the way they would have wanted to, but he was that front office's first draft pick from when they first got into the organization. They obviously didn't want to let a young 22-year-old who shot 41% from three and can play great defense walk away. Can't really blame them on that. And then the stunner this week, Jonathan Isaac, re-signing with the Orlando Magic, 5 years, $84 million. It's kind of like a little contract negotiation because part of his contract for this year was going to be non-guaranteed. Instead, they're bumping a lot of that money up. He's going to be making close to $26 million this upcoming season alone. Then it kind of teeters off at the end as those contract extensions for Paolo Banchero kick in and Jalen Suggs and Franz Wagner. So Florida State Seminoles have been getting paid. The total number for Leonard Hamilton players for signed NBA contracts is now up to $885 million. Insane number. And we could be seeing Terrence Mann get a contract extension at some point this summer too, because he's entering the last year of his deal. So we might be crossing the $900 million mark here pretty shortly.
Damn. Former guy is getting paid, man. Shout out to Coach Ham. He's done that. And like we were just talking about now, Odell Hagens also needs to get his respect on his name. He's put some money into some pockets for some former defensive tackles as well. But that's going to wrap up this week's episode of Hear the Spear. Deep appreciation here to former 2013 national champion. Golly. Nile Lawrence-Stample hanging out with us this entire evening. This has been an hour and 45-minute show. I'm pretty sure I told you this would be like maybe an hour 15 max, but
it's cool.
You gave great insight. like, this is phenomenal insight, and for you to have, you have these names down and everything, I think it's something. I'm already getting comments. I just got some DMs on Twitter that Nile needs to do this more consistently. They want to see you on here more, and I think we have a comment on here earlier in the show. We got to hire Nile now, so we have to get into contract negotiations here as well. Nile, I don't know if we'll be in those same numbers there. We're just talking basketball.
That's crazy. That's wild.
Yeah, we all got it here, man. Where's it at, Visa? You tell me where that money's at. But deep appreciation
awesome,
for you hopping on here with us, man. It was really awesome to get your insight.
Agreed, man. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I look forward to possibly the next time coming on here talking some Noles. Fall camp is going to be one to watch. This season is going to be one to watch, man. You guys follow me on Nola with Nile. Let's talk football, and I appreciate you guys. NoleGameday. This is great.
Absolutely, man. It was
Really
awesome. And too, whenever you get up there and you go to camp, one of those weeks we got to get you on the show too, and take some notes while you're there, so we can jump on here and get your take too, specifically on that OL versus DL. I can't trust D-Lou too much there on the inside. I gotta get.
I've only got
20.
Only got one set of eyes, buddy. There's a lot of football going on that field.
Oh, there's a lot. Norvell is buzzing. Holy smokes, he's all over the place. That is
man.
One energized guy, man. He is all over the place. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to seeing it, man. I got some guys out there that I'm working with that I really want to see excel. So yeah, we'll chop it up.
Yep, and we'll jump more into Joshua Farmer and Daryl Jackson. I know we didn't get to spend a whole ton of time on here talking about those two, but I think running it back with you during camp would be the perfect time to do so. And two, if you jump over to those practices over there at UNF and Jacksonville, we'll get your insight on those two guys, because those might be the pivotal factor for Florida State on Saturdays this upcoming fall.
I agree.
To be honest with you,
I agree, man. It's going to be fun to watch. I agree. There are going to be some dogs in there.
100%. But yeah, that's going to do it. Everybody, as always, you can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. If you're on YouTube right now, hit that like button, hit subscribe. Appreciate NLS hopping on here with us this evening. Hope to have him back later on before the season. But yeah, everybody enjoy July 4th. Enjoy time with your family. And we will talk to you guys next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Peace.